Hey everybody, it's your buddy's pal Anthony, and with me tonight is the hardest working man on YouTube, Mr. Aaron Waller. Hi, Aaron.
Hello, how is everybody?
We're all good. Yourself?
Good, good. Have a lot of thoughts on The Flash, and I think that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'm
That,
excited.
that is definitely what we're here to talk about today. And as the only affiliates who have seen it, it falls to us. So,
Oh God! And God damn it!
spoilers after the intro. Steve, hit it, please. All right. So we were just saying, really only a couple things we really want to talk about. You are the more experienced YouTuber, but the new guy here. So as the new man, I will say the floor is yours. What are your two biggest things from this movie that you're saying?
Like we said, even when we joined in on the live stream that we had, a couple of days ago, a week ago, whatever long it's been since we're recording this, I don't even know my days anymore. It's very much a mixed bag. Like it's not as hyped, like it's not as good as everyone kind of they're toting it to be, in my opinion. It was very underwhelming, and I'm just really disappointed in it. I feel like there was good in it, but it's like you really got to kind of look for it, and I didn't have as good of a time as you'd hope for, especially after waiting for. They announced this movie prior, I heard, to even the Flash TV show on the CW that had its entire run of 9 seasons, and then this movie finally came out. Like that show accomplished everything, and this movie still didn't come out. So it's been a long time coming, and it stumbled.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, they announced this. So like when Snyder first did everything, I think they announced like the Flash and Cyborg and I think obviously Wonder Woman, Aquaman, probably another Man of Steel and Justice. Like there's all this stuff that was announced. And you're right, because Dawn of Justice was in 2013. So now it's 10 years and we just got the first of those movies that was announced, and we'll never see the other ones, by the way. I agree with that. My thing is like I'm realizing it's a forgettable movie. Like I saw it same thing 2 days ago, and I'm just like scratching my head. Like again, I've already said spoilers before, but I'll say spoilers again. Like at the end when the young Barry dies, I'm sitting here before you and I joined, and I'm like, wait, I honestly don't remember. How the hell did he die? Did he kill himself to save everything, or did? Because I know our Flash didn't. Well, our Flash, the older Flash didn't do it. I can't even remember how he died. I think he killed himself, right?
I don't even remember, to
See,
be honest. I couldn't tell you.
but that just goes to your point too.
Oh wait,
Two
he
days
he
ago,
died saving Barry, our Barry, quote unquote,
right? He jumped in front
from
of
essentially his older Speed Force demon, whatever self.
Yeah.
I honestly I didn't remember that until 2 seconds ago talking about it. That's how terrible
So that's
that
a
whole
problem.
sequence was.
This was not like the best superhero movie ever, as many places have said. And did you see that thing I sent in the chat where the director actually was like, well, yeah, if you're noticing that the visual effects are not the best, it's because it's supposed to be from Barry's point of view, and Barry's moving so fast and the world blurs. And I'm like, okay, but
it's not even about the world blurring. Like it just looked bad.
Yeah.
It looked genuinely awful. Like I feel like this was borderline like early video game cutscene days, like where it just didn't look like it should. It looked very amateur. They looked like jelly people. Like it just didn't look right. And there was really no point of like the Speed Force was like when they started going into like the other multiverses, I knew there was going to be like a good amount of CG for obviously like Christopher Reeve, Adam West Batman, things like that, where these characters aren't around anymore. Even the Nicolas Cage Superman,
right,
universe we briefly visit. It's a stretch. Nicolas Cage is obviously a lot older now than he was supposed to be in the 90s when playing this. But even if they would have been like, okay, let's incorporate Nicolas Cage today. I mean, as an older Superman, we're seeing an older Batman. Why not just incorporate that? But still keep the CG for some of the other ones. But it looked bad. Like, again, video game cutscene is the best way that I can put it. Maybe like when they did like the Injustice games, when those were kind of rolling out. But even then, those cutscenes were better than what I feel like we saw here.
Yeah, and that's a problem. It's ridiculous. I don't buy it that it's intentional. I think it's, I don't know, just the best that they can do, which is sad after all this time. But
yeah, and like they've done decent CGI. I mean, obviously Doomsday gets a lot of flack for, not looking maybe like Doomsday, but at least it was something like, oh, he's evolving. And like, if they let it get to the Doomsday that we know, maybe that would have been, fairly acceptable. But, his sort of initial, lack of a better phrase, birth into like coming out, it was very underwhelming. But they really shit the bed.
They really did
on this. Like it was bad, real bad.
Yeah. So everybody, you should know if you're listening to this. I put out a thing, 5 things I wanted from the movie. We talked about it. Steve asked you that on the live. I won't go into all those again, but yeah, like this just didn't do any. Like I had to just basically salvage what I put out of it, and like I disagree with you. So I want to get this out of the way about the Michael Keaton, Luke Skywalker analogy, only because Keaton came around a lot quicker than Luke did. It didn't take like Keaton pretty much like, after the little speech, it's a speech that Barrett gives to the camera, hoping that Bruce is listening. He pretty much jumps right back in. He puts his baggage aside and shaves and suits up. Whereas Luke, it took the entire movie and he was still content to just let it play out without him until like the very last second.
Yeah. I was just so kind of going back to the CG. I knew we were in big trouble from that initial sort of hospital save. Like once it started going almost, I would say close to Deadpool when he started like trying to grab the kids and they had to stop to have his snack and then like put the baby in the microwave. I was like immediately starting to check out. I'm like, oh, we're in big trouble here. Yeah. But like this guy, Andy Muschietti, the director, clearly knows what he's doing because the scenes where Batman's on the motorcycle kind of gave that Dark Knight-esque style that I was like, okay, this is, solid. But once we jumped into like the stuff that's a little bit more impossible, I was like, oh man, this is going to be rough. And especially for a character that needs a lot of CG for visiting the multiverse, the Speed Force. We saw the Speed Force in the Snyder Cut, and it looked 10 times better.
Yeah.
It was blue, which I know a lot of people probably take issue with. And I even was like, okay, once he got into the Speed Force and was kind of almost in a bubble, but still able to run or stop and look around. And he was kind of like running backwards, but also not moving at all. Yeah. I was like, okay, like that's okay. But like, as he's seeing, they're doing like the 360 inside I almost felt like I was watching early, like the first X-Men from like the 2000s, like when he's in Cerebro and it just doesn't quite look right, but you're like, it's the 2000s. Like we're kind of just introducing the CG stuff. It felt like that. And I felt like we're way past that now. Like we've made so like leaps and bounds at this point. So it just looks bad. And then with Keaton, when he's the thing that really was hard for me to get over, and I make that Luke Skywalker analogy, is he felt so dumb. Not dumb, but when they're looking for him in the mansion, and then he's like hiding in a closet in a cabinet, and he's got his flip-flops on, and like he does like the weird little kung fu thing on the table. I was just like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. Like it just didn't. I was like, what is happening? This is not where I would imagine him to be at this point. I mean, obviously I'm fine with him having, the mansion being a mess. That wasn't never his forte. That was always Alfred doing that stuff. So that makes sense. But just like the flip-flops and the weird decisions there, I felt like that was more my Luke Skywalker analogy. He does come around. I agree.
Right.
It's much better than, the overall Last Jedi arc of Luke. But It was just that initial introduction back to the character that was like, who is this guy?
Yeah. Okay. So okay, I'll give you that one because I didn't like that part either. Like you said, him hiding in the closet or the pantry, whatever it was, and you know, that was just that. Yeah, that whole thing was just irritating. But like I say, I mean, at least he does come around, and then like I agree with you what you were saying. Like there are parts of the movie in here, like him and like the Ezra in the Batcave and things like that. But just I'll backtrack just a second. I didn't need anything with Ben Affleck in the bat suit, unfortunately. Like the motorcycle scene was cool, but it also like you had mentioned in the live, Gotham is supposed to be at night. He's supposed to be operating at night. Like Barry makes the joke, why it's the daytime? Shouldn't he be in like sleeping or whatever? It's like, yeah, exactly. He shouldn't be doing this in the daytime. Like, okay, it's a bigger threat, so he has to.
And
act
not
in the
even
daytime,
just
but
that it should have been the nighttime, but like even if it was cloudier, because it was like just a very mild afternoon and whatever they were using as a Gotham City at that point.
yeah,
and he's just like, yeah, I got to clean up this giant hospital earthquake mess, which I don't even remember. Why was it crumbling?
I forget too.
Exactly.
Honestly.
Like he just shows up and it's like it's crumbling.
Vault, maybe.
And then he's like, oh, but I can't deal with that because I got to go stop these guys who have this other weapon. And it was just like, why? What is happening? Why is this all just taking place in the middle of the day? Why is it just? It seemed very not like the world that it should have been set up as. I mean, we've seen Gotham, even Gotham in the Whedon Justice League was better when he's on the rooftops and watches the guy breaking the burglary guy, and he stops him and hangs him upside down or whatever for the parademons. Even that was better Gotham than what we got in this movie.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you on that one. And now fast forwarding back to Keaton, it didn't make any sense that he was portrayed the way he was at first, because he makes the quick comment like, Gotham's the safest city in the world now. They didn't need me.
Yeah.
All right, cool. You should have they should have brought Michelle Pfeiffer back in, and it should be like them and Helena or something, like going around or something. Like it didn't
or
make
even
sense.
If they alluded to something beyond that, with his history since then. Like even if they just didn't say, oh, Gotham's the safest city, because clearly there's still something maybe happening in Gotham. I mean, it's Gotham City. Even when it's safe, it's not. But even if he alluded to the potential of a Robin, which they did talk about having, I think it was supposed to be like Marlon Wayans or something like that. Not that they have to go to the extent of having him. I mean, if they did, they've made other leaps and bounds in this movie, other choices. They might as well. But even if they alluded to some of those little things, I would have been happier with that than some of those random sort of throwaway things that they're like, oh yeah, it's safe now, so that's why I never was Batman, and now I look like terrible and just decided to become a recluse.
Yeah.
There were 1,000 other directions to go with that character that would have been way better.
Yes, I agree. And like the motivation for the whole movie basically is, he wants to go back to save his mom, as they've said in the trailers. And it's just like, I felt like it undid the little bit of character progress that he had not progress, I should say, just like the little bit we learned about him in the Snyder Cut, which is the only if I say Justice League, I'm referring to the Snyder Cut, folks. Because it says, he says, at the end of the movie, he's like, you got to break the rule, you got to break the rule, you got to do it now. He set up his own rules. He has like knowledge of this stuff. It still felt like he was very day one, very early, but he's not, because his boss at the crime lab says, after all these years, you shouldn't be still getting me coffee. So time has passed. This isn't 5 seconds after the Snyder Cut. He had that rule in the Snyder Cut. He had to have thought about it until then.
So it just felt like they regressed him for the sake of their story, and for, saying to hell with what happened, because he had that rule in Justice League. He broke it for a very good reason. The entire world was ending. Terrific reason to break your rule and go back in time. But time has passed since then. It wasn't like him just like freaking out and somehow it breaking the time barrier, and then it does it. He had this rule. He broke it for a good reason. I feel like in that space, he would have thought about it and been talked out of it. So it wasn't a good enough reason for this whole movie, like, to me.
Yeah, and then kind of like what I've said in the lives, and I think I even mentioned it in my other review, is it tried to do Flashpoint, but also sort of circumnavigate doing anything really to Flashpoint. It essentially took out completely the Reverse Flash. They didn't even acknowledge who killed Nora Allen, even though we all pretty much know that it's going to end up being the Reverse Flash. I think the whole point was to leave it open for a sequel. I think the director even came out and said, yes, it's the Reverse Flash, but they, again, never even made that step in the direction. He was just, it seemed like he wanted to do Flashpoint, but he just recently watched Back to the Future and was like, I just really want to do a Back to the Future. I don't know, it just makes sense. That was just kind of the impression that I had gotten from the whole thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Although I did think it was funny, the whole thing about the Back to the Future and Eric Stoltz and them kind of having that back and forth. I thought that was, fairly decent comedy for the whole sake of the movie. But there were some other things that just felt off for that whole aspect.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I wasn't really a huge fan of younger Barry, but that interaction was fine. But just the rest of the time, I just really did find the younger one grating and just like irritating, which I get he was supposed to be, but it was just too much. It was just too much. And then,
even if they tried to make it younger Barry. Well, even when he was younger Barry, well, I guess it was still he still had trauma of the death of his mother. From like the original or Batman v Superman, we first saw him on the cameras. He didn't seem like he was in exactly the most cheerful of moods. Well, even if we just saw him like on the security footage, getting a drink out of the refrigerator or whatever. Didn't seem like he was the happiest go luckiest type, even then. Even if we jump into the Snyder cut, when we have that scene of him running around and the truck hitting Iris's car and him kind of catching her, and then he kind of runs back to the dog job interview, whatever, which I don't know why he had the dog job interview. If he was doing working at the crime lab.
He wasn't working at the crime lab yet. He was just taking like every odd job to try to fund his father's defense.
So yeah, I forgot even that. But it just didn't seem like the same type. Obviously, he was more positive since his mom never died, probably.
Yeah.
I guess the argument can be made there. But even when he was younger, in that regard, it didn't seem like the same Barry. I feel like it almost would have made more sense had this been less connected to the Snyder Cut, or not Snyder Cut rather, but the Snyderverse in some way, and even followed even more than the footsteps of a Shazam. Even though he was involved in Batman v Superman and being introduced, and he was part of Justice League, I feel like if it was a bit more adjacent further, even, it would have made more sense. Even the cameos, could remove most of those, completely cut out Ben Affleck because he was essentially useless. Didn't even get a wrap-up story by the end, or
He's
anything.
just gone.
Yeah, just turn into he just dust in the very Avengers, I guess, manner. Just completely disappeared. The Wonder Woman cameo I hated. The Aquaman cameo was 50-50, I would say. I didn't love it, didn't hate it. I honestly kind of miss Cyborg. I know there was a big drama there, but I feel like if there was any cameo to happen, based on everything we've seen, it would have been Cyborg. But everyone else just felt like an absolute waste cameo wise.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really didn't like that they reused the joke from the Justice cut about Wonder Woman shows up towards the end of the opening action sequence where Batman's chasing down the bad guys on the motorcycle. He dives off a bridge to save one of them because they have this poison or something, and Alfred tells him, if it hits the water, it's going to kill millions. So he shoots a line, goes down, grabs them. They're still about to fall because there's a malfunction with the grapple gun, and then Wonder Woman's lasso goes over, grabs them, hauls them up. And then without her even interrogating him, really, like I think she's again, this is a very forgettable movie. I'm sorry. So I think maybe she said, "Hey, how you doing?" And then Batman just goes off on a whole, I mask my pain to I use my rage to mask my pain or something like that. And they reuse the gag where Arthur sits on the lasso in Justice League and he starts spouting, like he says Wonder Woman's gorgeous, and he alludes to an Atlantean Themysciran war. And that whole gag, and then like Barry shows up and he touches it and he announces to the world that he's a virgin, and it was just like, why? This is not good.
I felt like they definitely alluded to more of a relationship between Wonder Woman and Batman in that moment, even if it was more just played for a joke because of like his sort of confession type of thing. I feel like they alluded to it more at any point than ever, but I think they were supposed to sort of have something, according to, if I remember correctly, Snyder was supposed it was Bruce and Lois Lane. I think.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Okay. But yeah, it was just sort of like an out of nowhere interaction that was like, this was purely played for the cameo. Like it had no involvement or no need to even happen or exist.
No, I agree with that. And I'll actually disagree with you again. So there's only one post-credit scene and it's Aquaman, but it's, he's in his civilians and him and Barry are like walking out of a bar. Aquaman is hammered. I hated that whole scene. I was just like, this is so pointless. Like, and if you're telling me that's the version of Aquaman we're going to be seeing in his sequel, pass.
And from what I've heard since we're staying on the Aquaman thing, and I'm sure we'll get to the biggest cameo more or less in just a minute, is that they're alluding to, or the purpose that he returned in a post, Barry returning, is that he's supposed to be quote unquote the same in every universe. And that's why his movie coming out post The Flash isn't kind of affected by that. But that may cause issue if he does or does not still remain as Aquaman as we shift gears into the DCU, or if it just doesn't matter. I'm probably leaning more towards it just doesn't matter. But that's why I was kind of like, it's 50-50. It was good to see him, but like in just such a ridiculous term. I felt like it was better if they just kept the Arthur joke from earlier in the movie about him being the dog. Yeah. Just would have kept that. That would have been enough Aquaman for me. It's same thing. Again, going back to Shazam with the kid wearing the Aquaman shirt or him pulling out the Batarang because it's one in the drawer. Yes, Barry has had direct interaction with these heroes because he's part of the Justice League, but it just nothing felt like it fit together in any natural way. It was as weird as seeing the Justice cut with that opening Superman weird mouth phone footage. It just, nothing looked right. It just felt weird right out of the gate. And it makes me feel gross thinking about it. Very forgettable. Yeah.
And I will say, going back to the VFX and Ben Affleck's Batman, what the biggest thing, I don't even care that they put him in a blue cowl. The rest of that suit looked weird. Like he's again wearing like an armor chest plate over his.
Really
awkward. So bad.
It looked like it fit him weird. Like especially like the webbing thing that they had kind of go as it goes under his arms, from the symbol to under his arms. It looked really weird. I don't know what costume designer did that, but I was not a fan of that one.
No, I didn't like it. He had the best costume in Dawn of Justice and the Snyder Cut, and minus the tactical suit. I wasn't crazy about I even like the tactical suit, but the goggles, I wasn't crazy about that, but whatever. But the biggest tragedy to me is for Batfleck, they lost the digitally altered voice, and he was just doing what every other Batman has done except for Adam West, and did just the gravelly kind of raspy voice for a little bit. And I was just like, no, you had the best voice for a live action.
And they made that such an emphasis in, I think it was specifically Dawn of Justice. I think they referred back to it again, maybe in Justice League at some point, where Alfred's kind of fixing the voice changer. Or was that also in
Dawn of Justice? In Dawn of Justice. He puts the mic to his throat when he's like making the battle armor to test it out or something.
So it wasn't even like it was just like an afterthought. Like this was clearly a choice for the character, and they completely threw it away.
Yeah. So they said to hell with consistency of any kind. And we're
I think
starting
that's
again.
probably one of those situations where it's like the fans didn't like this, so we tossed it. Or like because BVS had such a backlash to it, it was probably like one of those things that like this is a quick and easy change versus whatever other mountain of flack that they were catching at that time. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of how it felt.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I didn't care for it overall. And then I tell you what I did care for, because there are some things in this movie that I did enjoy. Like once it really picks up, and like they did too much like dumb back and forth. Like I feel with older Barry and younger Barry. So when older Barry does eventually go back in time and saves his mom, he's trying to run back to the present. And then the Dark Flash knocks him out of the time stream, and he's in 2013, the Man of Steel era. And then he spends a lot of time with his younger self because, of course, he's goes home. He doesn't realize he's in the past still. He goes home. He has dinner with his parents. He's all happy. Then we see the younger Barry, and that's where in the trailer, he's freaking out. You stole my face. I feel like he got over that. Like that was like a good place to go with, to be like very, what the hell is going on? The younger Barry accepts everything that's happening very quickly. And then there's that whole sequence where they did there's a whole thing where Barry realizes the day that he's at is when he gets his powers. So he makes the accident happen. Like he gets him to the crime lab, because younger Barry now doesn't go to the crime lab, because why would he? And then older Barry loses his powers, gives them to younger Barry, and then we have younger Barry freaking out and being happy and doing all this stuff. And this isn't the part I liked. I'm just being me and rambling. Sorry, Aaron's like, I'm out of here.
No, I'm honestly just reflecting on the movie because I'm like trying to remember some of these points, because I remember obviously the main points, but then you think about it and you're like, I forgot there was that whole sequence where he keeps running off and doing his own thing with this power discovery while this other one's freaking out. So I genuinely forgot about that.
Yeah, and it's just like it goes to, like I say, it just doesn't fit, because that was good, but not in this, because I don't need to see this Barry learning his powers and all that stuff, because again, I get it, we're in the past, I get it now, he accidentally got his powers. It just felt like dragging it out for no reason.
No, they definitely dragged it out, because I feel like it made sense up until the point where they had to get out of the crime lab, to me. Even if they played it up to the joke where he's like, we got to get out of here, and the Barry starts trying to run a lap in the room to go fast, and he's just running his little speed skate weird run, but in a giant circle around the room. They could have cut it there. Like they didn't have to have the entire sequence where Barry's at home, and like if they've wanted to reiterate those points of like your clothes burn up, could have kept that within the crime lab. Or like around that same sequence. We didn't have to have the whole thing where he goes home and then phases through the floor, and then it just kept building where it's like, okay, we get that he's still learning his powers. It's not an overnight thing. He can still say throughout the movie, like, oh, I didn't learn that until 2 weeks in or whatever. That would have been fine, but we didn't need the whole demonstration of, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing, and then him just sort of acting childish about it.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, like maybe the first time around, that's fine. But if this happens to one of us and we see, and everything else, yeah, okay, we'll think it's cool. But then like older Barry is telling him some really important and heavy shit. And he's completely like, it's almost like, because your mom didn't die, you're just an idiot. It's like, I'm telling you, if this, another version of you is here. He's telling you, hey, if I don't get back, and oh, by the way, this is the day that an alien came down and the world's almost going to end and this and that. And he's still like very aloof and very like, oh, wait, what? He's almost like Drax. You know what? I'm sorry. I wasn't listening. I stopped listening. Yeah. Whatever. Plan to take Thanos.
No, that's a great analogy. No, that's a great
But,
comparison. I didn't even really think too much about that. I did kind of like the storyline that they decided to go with him, it being kind of the day that he got his powers, and then showing him kind of like arriving and saving the kid, but not the dad. That was, that was kind of a good contextual addition to everything we've seen since Man of Steel. I
Yes.
mean, even when we went with Batman v Superman and Bruce saw the whole thing happening over in Gotham, and not Wayne Tower, but one of the buildings had collapsed, and
Yeah.
he was like, his friend was in it and all that stuff. Like those little things I felt like made sense to add, but everything else beyond that kind of just felt like, why are you really adding more, to this? But I did like, or wait, that was what I liked, was that addition. But I wasn't a massive fan of like the two berries and how that whole thing started to play out. Like, maybe it's just because I think I mentioned this before, because we're such fans of the comic and the cartoon, why there are now two berries instead of, I guess they kind of explained it with the whole spaghetti analogy. But it just felt, that was just another thing that felt weird. And it didn't feel like they were doing it for any purpose other than just to play a really long joke for two and a half hours, 3 hours, whatever, that they wanted to do it for. I felt like it would have made more sense if it was just, oh, I got knocked out, and now because I'm in a different timeline for, now I'm in a different time, so I didn't have my powers yet, so I'm not going to have them. Even if they kept the suit on him, because in the comic, I think he just sort of wakes up and he's like, in the crime lab or whatever, which I also hated the crime lab. I know that's really weird. It was like super bright and everyone was like super nice, and it didn't feel dark or dingy or like that basement level job he's supposed to have. So that was kind of weird, at least in his original timeline. But it just felt like it would have made more sense had they played that other version. But again, they must have just wanted to play a long laugh for a while, because I just would have preferred just a single berry would have been fine.
Yeah, a single berry would have been fine. And honestly, like you were saying, the crime lab stuff in his original timeline, and honestly, even the Iris stuff was useless. Like, same thing. Like, Ben Affleck was there for 5 minutes. So was, I don't even know her name, but the Iris West actress, she was in it for 5 minutes, and she's actually the impetus for the idea that for what Barry decides to go back and change. Because I did like Ben Affleck out of the suit talking to Barry, like talking him out of changing the past and everything. That was fine. Like, if you didn't have him in the suit and everything else, cool. And then he just comes in to do that part. But the rest of that and the two berries was just annoying. Like, or even if they just ended it quickly, because okay, he's in the past, there's two of him because there was a him in 2013. If he I mean, he doesn't realize, I guess, at that point that he's in an alternate timeline instead of his timeline. Sure. But like, even if he he's like, oh my God, I got to get you to the crime lab, because if you don't get your powers, I don't get my powers. Gets him struck by lightning, and then like in the TV show, he's in a coma, and then there's no more two berries. Okay, cool. But again, like,
it would have at least taken him out of the equation for the events of the movie. And like, even if you set it up and had that gag, it would have worked, temporarily. And then even if what caused his coma was seeing himself, very, again, kind of like Back to the Future, like passed out, and then you get rid of him. You leave him on the doorstep, like he did with Jennifer or something like that. Something just super easy, and you could have called it a day. But they played the whole thing out. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the final quote unquote scene, cameo, whatever you want to call it. How do we feel? I want to get your thoughts. I want you to sort of ramble as much as you need, because I'm genuinely curious. This is something we had to avoid talking about for spoilers context and live streams, and just even in our group chat, we can't even talk about it. So this is the first time that I'm talking to you about it. So I want to hear your side.
So the final big spoiler is, movie ends, Barry's father gets acquitted. He gets a call, or he makes a call to Bruce to thank him, because Bruce sent some technology that cleaned up the footage, and now you can see his father's face. Cool. He's walking out, talking to Bruce on the phone. We see like the really sick looking Mercedes, I think it was, that Bruce drove, that Affleck drove. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be Affleck. And then I remembered, oh, wait, I saw a picture of Michael Keaton standing next to that thing. Oh, they're bringing back Keaton. And I couldn't make the voice out on the phone, and I thought, okay, it could be Keaton. And then car parks, open the door, photographers, oh, it's Bruce Wayne, it's Bruce Wayne. And we see none other than George fucking Clooney walking up, and Barry, and I can't, this is again my memory, my Swiss cheese. I'm not sure if I'm inserting this or if it actually happened. I'm pretty sure Ezra Miller looks at him and says, "Who the fuck are you?" And
that was probably the best, one of the, if not the best line of the movie. I would say top 5, because it was genuinely played. It was one of those moments where, like, it's a PG-13 movie. They use their one F-bomb. They save it for like that last moment. It works perfectly. That was great. And that's how I think we all kind of genuinely felt, because if they were going to play it, I put my cards on the table. I said, if they're going to play it, they did it, would have had their chance in the multiverse when he's running, when he sees all the different universes. We saw, Reeve, we saw Adam West, we saw Nicolas Cage.
George Reeve.
Nicolas Cage, both Reeves, both George Reeves and Christopher Reeves. We saw it all. If it was going to happen, that was it. We know the 2 Batman, and we're going to move on. But then they threw the wrench in with George Clooney coming back, and the line worked perfectly. I still can't wrap my head around it, because that was the one moment where I'm like, okay, now this is where I would like to see the continuation. Most of the movie, I'm like, okay, this is the one and done. Let's cut it off here. But I'm kind of curious to see how this would have played out, even if they just like leak like a mock script or something like that later, because we're shifting gears into DCU. This was something that I feel like could be kind of interesting, especially for playing what would be considered the worst Batman movie and the worst Batman of the list. How would you play this out?
Yeah.
I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah, I didn't think I needed George Clooney redemption until I saw him, because, like, look, I'll say this: he was a good Bruce Wayne. Like,
good Bruce Wayne.
The Batman stuff, was terrible and too campy, and Val Kilmer was a good Batman at parts, but I think he was too stiff as Bruce Wayne. You know what I mean? So, like, to me, Keaton was, at the time, out of those 3, Keaton had the well-rounded thing, I thought. And then, like I just said about the other 2. So, yeah, I mean, I was just, at that point, like, I just said, fuck it. I was like, okay, cool. I wasn't even angry at this point. To me, unfortunately, that was like the nail in the coffin of, like, all right, this is definitely, he's in the wrong universe. Like, because I don't think, in its current state, I don't think Warner Brothers has enough money in the world to get George Clooney to do a Batman movie. I think this was it.
They would never get him in the suit like they got Keaton again. That's for sure.
Oh no, and that's that. Keaton was moving in the suit good. Like I said, I wanted depth out of him and Affleck. I didn't get that, so I had to take what I can get. Keaton kicked ass as Batman. He still got it once he got the shave on and everything. I do scratch my head that instead of in the Batcave, he has the wall in the library that opens up, and that's the round of the suit armor, the suit armory that he has. But yeah, he was definitely good back in the cowl, and even though I didn't get my depth or anything like that, but yeah, the George Clooney thing was just like, okay.
Do you think
at that point I just laughed. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, probably one of the best. Oddly, somehow one of the best things about the movie, or at least that had stuck with me. Maybe it's because it's like the final moment, but genuinely stuck with me about the movie was that, as opposed to most of what happens to Barry in 2.5 hours. Do you think that if it had been Kilmer, had Kilmer not gotten sick, had he not had all those things, do you think that he would have been replaced with Kilmer versus Clooney? Do you think it was more of a choice of because he's still around, or do you think they purposefully chose Clooney?
That's a tough one. I think they purposefully chose Clooney because he really did have like the worst reception from start to finish. Like I say, Batman Forever, and supposedly Steve's favorite director, Kevin Smith, has the what was the director's name of Forever and Batman
Schumacher.
yes, supposedly Kevin Smith has the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever, but there were parts of a good movie in that too. Like, you know, if once you get past the bat nipples and everything, it's definitely more watchable to me than Batman and Robin, because Batman and Robin is just camp. But I think it was because he got like the worst thing, like the worst reception, and probably like he's had the worst reaction to being Batman. I think he's actually like publicly apologized a couple of times at like other movies. If there's another Batman movie out and he's doing another movie and somebody asks him, and one time he definitely did apologize, so that was cool. And so did Schumacher at one point.
Yeah.
But I think it's that. I mean, if anything, maybe if they really wanted to do it, they should have done like Sal had mentioned. If Kilmer was healthy and everything else, it would have been cool to do, as Sal mentioned in our group chat, there's an episode of Justice League Unlimited where they do time travel and Jon Stewart gets replaced, like phases, and Hal Jordan's there. It would have been kind of cool if like, but they weren't, they kept the time travel stuff very isolated on Barry, which I get. So it wouldn't really have worked. But like if there was something happening where like time was breaking and then you saw like, even for a split second, Kilmer or Clooney, any of the other, Christian Bale. I thought Christian Bale was going to be the Batman we saw. Like when the trailer first came out, I don't know if they've replaced it, but like when you see behind what we now know as Michael Keaton's cowl and he steps out, that like dun dun is Christian Bale's score.
Because he has the full sort of waterfall. I don't remember. Keaton does have the waterfall in his Batcave, right? If I remember
I don't think so. They never show it. So I mean, it could have always been there, and they just never showed it,
right?
Because
they, I mean, they made it not a fairly big point, but that definitely was part of Bale. Sorry, Bale's Batman's Batcave.
Oh yeah,
is the entrance of being behind a waterfall, and that was so clear in the poster, in the trailers, in everything that you could have made the argument that this could be Bale's Batman.
Yeah, I was hyping myself up for 1 second of Bale back in the suit. I won't lie. And I feel like we're going to be wrapping soon. But before we do, I do want to mention Sasha Kelly's Supergirl. I didn't really have a problem with her. I don't want anybody to think that we didn't. I liked her. I haven't mentioned her, not because I didn't like her, just because we've been talking about all the other stuff. But he was considering that, I think maybe you said it in your review. She basically had to do Man of Steel in 15 minutes. Yeah. Considering that shrunk down timetable of like her character progression and everything.
Right.
I thought she did a really good job, and I would like to see her continue as Supergirl if that's ever even a possibility going forward.
I was disappointed that they kept emphasizing like I understand the lesson, I suppose, but the whole thing about Keaton and Sasha Calle's Supergirl having to die, no matter sort of like what, I'm like, come on, like, is there not just maybe one or like something like that? I understand the lesson. It's already been made clear kind of with Nora Allen that's kind of the lesson. But it kind of sucked watching. I'm like, okay, we got a second shot, and then like they die again. And then like, okay, we can fix it again. And like once he started going for like the third time, where he's like, let's like Younger Barry is like, let's get up, let's do it again, and like he just takes off, and then our Barry's like, it doesn't really work like that. I'm like, it's going to be one of those things where it's just got to end one way or another, which was kind of disappointing, at least maybe for me. I thought so, but another random question about Batman. Do you think it would have been better? Let's not say better, because I think this movie had a big uphill battle by that point.
Definitely.
If the person who got out of that Batmobile, in order to set up the DCU and the establishment between DCU and Elseworlds, had it been Robert Pattinson's Batman, different world, yes. Don't get me wrong. I know it's drastically different, a lot darker, but it would establish that there's the Elseworld side and the DCU side, where if there was that potential, Ezra Miller could remain the Flash, assuming this did well enough and they weren't off doing a bunch of illegal stuff and getting arrested left and right. Had they continued, that would have been potential there. Bit of a stretch, I know, but it came to me.
I honestly hadn't really considered that. That would have been really cool, and I would have liked that. because where they leave it to me is Barry realizes he's still not in the right universe because he's looking at George Clooney and has no idea who he is, and he's wondering where Ben Affleck is. So then, like that, he has to make that decision: do I stay here? Is everything just a little different or whatever? If Pattinson had gotten out, that would have been cool, and it would help world build Pattinson. And then R. Barry could have just after. I don't know if he doesn't. I would say he doesn't use the F-bomb when he sees Pattinson. He's just like, what? Who? Bruce? You're young, confusing, da da da. And then they talk and something happens, and he goes like, oh fuck, I'm in the wrong universe. If you just have to have the F-bomb in there, and then kind of zips off. That would have been a little bit more. Just in general, him zipping off would have been more satisfactory than him seemingly staying in this altered timeline. But yeah, that would have been cool. I mean, I ramble. I apologize. To go back, that would have been cool to see Pattinson walk out. I hadn't even considered that, just because I know they're pretty much considering the Pattinson universe its own isolated thing. They're going to get maybe 2 more and a Penguin series and end it. But that would have been really cool to see too. No, that would have been cool. I'm oddly very happy with George Clooney having walked out. Like I am
too. And I feel like it looked right for some reason, like having just the gray as opposed to the Batman. Again, don't get me wrong. I've been loving Ben Affleck's Batman in this entire universe and Bruce Wayne, but there's those times where you can tell the reshoots because he's a little bit heavier, or whatever. I think it's in Justice League where he shaves or something like that, and he looks completely different as opposed to the rest of the movie. But he looked good for what I would consider to be an older Bruce Wayne. It fit, despite how much everyone has torn down Batman and Robin over the past going on close to 30 years soon. I think it's gonna be 25, 30 by now.
yeah, another one.
Unfortunately for us, that is true. But he looked good. I would kind of believe it now. I think it would be worth exploring, but I genuinely don't think this gets a sequel. Do you think?
No, I think honestly, my overall impression of it is, sadly, it's like the rest of the movies that Snyder didn't have anything to do with, but were in the DCEU. It's a one and done. It has some connectivity, Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. I'm not saying that whole title.
That's enough.
She mentions
we know
Batman.
What you're talking about.
Yeah, she mentions she mentions Bruce Wayne, and then she you see the Joker without his face, and it's clearly the Jared Leto Joker. There's little bits of connective tissue to the rest of the universe, but to me, this was just a one and done movie. And the fact, it kind of helps. It does leave the door open for a sequel somewhere down the line. Just in the fact that, to me, my interpretation is, like I said, because Clooney showed up, he realizes, shit, I'm not in the right universe. Now he has to make a decision what to do. So do we maybe see him, if they ultimately are building towards a Justice League movie in the Gunverse, if enough time has passed, if his legal troubles have been resolved satisfactorily, does he zip into the Justice League battle and, help out somehow? Right. It would be weird because they'd be like, who the hell are you? And then hopefully they avoid the whole obligatory hero fight. It's not obligatory to me type of thing. But yeah, no, to me, this is that's a stretch. So I think this is a one and done. Snyder Cut is still the definitive end, even though he left the door open, but it's a definitive end to the Snyderverse. This was just same character, same actor, but adjacent to the Snyderverse, and that's it. It's got to be done for me. What did you think of his suit?
It was tough because there were times where I'm like, okay, I can kind of get behind it. But then he would be sort of just either walking around or just have it on. I'm like, this just looks like a giant. It looks like the rubber suits from those early, the 90s movies. And it's just like, this is not how I would quite imagine it. For an evolution of the character. The TV show did it better, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Than this sort of rubber suit. I did want to believe in it, when I saw the trailers, like and like the poster. I'm like, okay, I can, maybe kind of believe it. But the more you look at it, the weirder it looks, and I don't think I could really get behind seeing it several times, especially with it being that evolution. And this is something that his Bruce developed for him, opposed to the what was it, like the aerospace plates or whatever that he had kind of
Yeah, he like
together.
stole it from NASA, and
Yeah.
yeah,
But it just looked like a giant rubber.
Yeah.
Nothing, and I couldn't really get behind it. With even had like the fake muscles underneath it, like the abs and everything. And
yeah,
I was like, okay, we can. But they do other suits so good. Sasha Calle's
Yeah.
Supergirl.
Yeah, Keaton's Batman.
Keaton's Batman. All of them, even Keaton Batman suits that weren't worn, the ones in the gallery in his bookcase. Great. But that one was a tough sell. Even the decision with younger Barry to modify a bat suit and cut the ears off and all this other stuff was like, this is ugly. Like, I understand the point. Like, he doesn't have a suit, so he's got to kind of make what he has. But I couldn't get behind the Flash suits once I saw them in action and used for a full movie.
Yeah, no, same. And I'm glad you said that about the CW show, because his suit evolved, and the final, at least I think season 8 and 9 probably had the same suit, some tweaks. That was a good suit. Yeah, that was a damn good suit.
I mean, even as they evolved little things, like even if it wasn't massive, I don't know if they were going for, because I mean, that was technically Wally West, I suppose, in the Justice League show. I don't know if they were going for more of that style where it's a lot more red. And they kind of mixed in a little bit of that Man of Steel decision to remove I don't know why everybody calls them trunks. I still call it underwear. For like the Superman underwear sort of look. And like, even if they didn't even have like a golden boots or anything like that. Like, those evolutions came to the TV show, and it made it get better and better as the seasons went on. But this one it didn't feel like it had that one thing. Even when, like, I could kind of see when he like was doing his sort of charge up thing and it kind of expanded the yellow lines like throughout the suit, it looked pretty good. But anytime it was just the solid red and the emblem, it looked like garbage to me.
Yeah, same. And I didn't like that the helmet seemed to be like, probably really was made out of hard plastic, but it had a very helmety feel, and like it was noticeably different than the rest of the suit. Like, the rest of the the rest of the suit looks smooth and whatnot, but then you have like the plastic and the everything else on
lines,
it.
or like
it
was like a glossy with more of like a matte suit, so like it looked very apparent that this doesn't go with this suit, or like it was added on in a different way.
Just so we can kind of end on a somewhat upbeat note, because I mean, after Hey Archer, I think a lot of people may have been reaching for a knife.
We really brought that show down, but
we did. I didn't want to. I mean, I think
we all hoped for this.
Yes, no.
What was hyped? We all hoped for what was hyped, right? Especially with the delays.
Wrong. Yeah,
I did too. I genuinely hoped that there would be something. Maybe this would be the game changer, the one that, I don't know if it was this hope that the Snyderverse would be saved because we have more of an attachment to it. I know Steve doesn't, because he hates Man of Steel and basically 90% of the Snyderverse. But we still have some, hope for it, and we enjoy, the Snyder Cut and things like that. So maybe it was just that hope for the end to be good. It's because we know it's, changing that gear. But it was just disappointing, very disappointing. But like I said, it's entertaining to a certain degree. I wouldn't say it was like when I saw Suicide Squad, where the first Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad, where I was genuinely kind of upset for the entire movie. That was one that I considered but did not walk out on, of the entirety ones. But this one I was fairly entertained for the most part. Just, it was riddled with problems that, based on how long it took to come out, should have been fixed.
Yeah. No, same. I it was entertaining. There were things I enjoyed, but all in all, for what we got versus what everybody's been saying, I would love to know what these people are on to be saying that. How can you so much for ending on a positive note. How do you get the balls to say this is the best superhero movie ever? Okay, hang on. That's how we're going to end on a positive note. What's your best superhero movie to date ever? Animated, live action?
That's a good question. I have another question for you to encourage the ramble, but I don't know if I should or should not.
Do it. You have to do it.
Okay. Well, while I think about that, I'm gonna let you ramble and I'll pose this question. Somehow he now confirmed has the job for Brave and the Bold.
Yes.
Director. What are your thoughts on that while I ponder the deepness of the best superhero movie ever?
Okay, so I'm not totally opposed to it because even though I thought the Batman scene was pointless and unnecessary, it can be fixed if if James Gunn reminds him, hey, he works at night. Hey, Gotham is supposed to look like, the dirtiest city in the world. Go have him spend a weekend in Detroit. Sorry for Detroit. Remind him what it's supposed to look like. And, the action was good. Don't make anybody do the gravelly voice anymore. Bring back the synth voice. I don't care if they're going to be like, oh, he's stealing it. Steal it. Steal it. It's a great idea. Steal the voice. And just as long, I'm not opposed to it because again, it was good. Like up and until the lasso joke being reused, it was good. His fighting style, it was very more comic booky because at one point when Affleck's Batman is like being dragged and he's just holding onto the grapple and he's being dragged on the highway and like basically skiing on his
and
boots.
when he goes through the explosion and all that stuff, I was kind of like, okay, this is getting a little bit too much for what in my mind the capabilities of this Batman should be.
Yeah, like they need to dial it back just a little bit, I think. Or if that's going to be the tone of the new universe, we'll have to live with it and critique that as it comes. But I mean, in a world where we saw Robert Pattinson's Batmobile take that jump through the fireball, I think his motorcycle could have made the jump. So I'm saying I'm not excusing that part. Like that him leaping from the bike through the fireball and then skiing, that's not good. Like get rid of that. But the rest of that, get rid of that and get rid of the stupid lasso moment at the end. And I didn't see anything there. Like that puts me off, but even with that in there, I'm not 100% put off to the idea. And so I'm open to it. It's not this movie outing from this director with this superhero it's not a no from me. I can't think of how to put it more eloquently. I apologize. It's not a no from me.
I think that if he can do what he did in that initial sort of chase sequence for 99% of it, even if we say, okay, there is going to be that extraordinary element because it's Batman, the likelihood of it reaching levels of what happened here in The Flash, we probably won't run into those same problems for the most part, unless he's maybe fighting Killer Croc or somebody that's going to be, Clayface, one of those characters that's going to be pushing that boundary. For the most part, if he can keep it within that realm, it's going to work for the most part. Maybe not be perfect, but it'll definitely mostly fit.
Yeah, that's the thing. And we haven't gotten a perfect Batman film yet. I enjoyed the hell out of Ben Affleck. Too much murder. Christian Bale even. Too much murder by you can probably get out of this on your own and stuff like that. Obviously Michael Keaton, way too much murder in the first one. And even the second one, he did blow the guy up with the dynamite. But so we haven't gotten a perfect Batman movie. Just a consistent we have gotten good ones. So I think that's what people have to the directors maybe have to get out of their heads. It's not going to be perfect. You just have to make it good and faithful. You can make it faithful to the character and without driving yourself crazy, I think. So
I think they can make it faithful to the character, even if they said, okay, we're going to use a specific, I hate to say classification, let's just say a specific era of Batman. So
Mhm.
say they don't, even though it's been used primarily as like the go-to, a more modern, currently in today's technology, in today's world type of Batman, whether it be Bale's or Affleck's,
Pattinson? Oh.
and Pattinson as well. They're very much live in a more realistic world. Even if they went with, okay, this Batman's going to be a little bit more outside of that realm. Maybe if it's like 90s where a little things kind of went off the wall. People were, I don't know, even in the 80s or something like that, on whatever drug the comic book artists were on at that time. A little bit more outside of the norm. If they wanted to, take that leap, I feel like it could be potentially different. I don't foresee it happening. I think they'll try and stay in more of that realistic realm because that seems to be the direction for a lot of these now. I think it would be interesting to see something a little bit more out of left field, a little bit more McFarlane, a little bit more, just wild and wacky. Doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be completely, maybe going full golden age or something where he's like Batman and thumbs up and,
Yeah.
whatever, Adam West going back that far type of, style. But, adding a little bit of comic book to a comic book movie, I don't think would hurt.
Yeah. No,
even a little bit.
I follow what you're saying. Like, I don't need you to explain that, like when he's brooding on the gargoyle, I don't need you to explain that his cape flowing as, like great like that. And then next thing you know, he's got like a shin level or an ankle level cape. Like, okay, we did that for these, like stuff like that. Or maybe if he's like makes a leap, as we've seen him do in the movies excuse me, we see him doing the cartoons and stuff like that. Like he makes that superhero jump without the aid of the grapple, maybe like some elements like that. Is that kind of what you're going for?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't exactly that. It doesn't have to be, a full background in him having to, know somebody with a tactical background in order for it to work. He doesn't have to go and learn. We don't have to see him go learn Krav Maga in the mountains to, know that this is a more grounded, realistic, style, or, he has to have a certain style of suit because that fits a more tactical style that they're kind of going for. I'm kind of more digging, I guess, here on Bale's Batman more than any other one, but a little bit of that campiness from Batman and Robin. I'm not saying we're diving full in head first, even though apparently they could if they wanted to with the cameo.
Yeah.
I'm not saying going that far. I'm not saying, but there were some of those comic book campy moments in there that I said, this is kind of fun. Gotham being a little bit over the top, a little bit extra. We don't need the neon maybe because it's not the 90s anymore, but the buildings being extremely close together. You can jump a motorcycle from one to the other, being extremely tall and just overpopulated and dark. Those little things I think could go a long way in making something today feel more comic-y without going full send Batman and Robin.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. I agree. Have you thought of your best superhero movie?
I've been looking, I've been scrolling as to what I want to pick. There's so many that are like near and dear to my heart, but I know that they're wrong in some faction.
Honestly, that's the beautiful thing about this. It, like I said, there's no perfect superhero movie.
True.
It's perfect to us, but there's not.
Right.
Nobody's going to agree that it's right or wrong. Or excuse me, not everybody's going to agree that it's right. Not everybody's going to agree that it's wrong. You trust your feelings, Aaron.
If I had, I would. What comes to mind are three, two of which are Batman movies. So I would say, Mask of the Phantasm, if I'm choosing animated. For live action, I'm gonna catch flack for it, but I would say probably the Batman, the most recent with Robert Pattinson. I had zero belief in that movie when it was announced that he would be Batman. I was like, great, just go ahead and chalk it off. Not gonna be good. And then the first trailer came out and it had me honestly just floored. And I saw the movie and I was floored even further. Like I genuinely liked it. And it felt like it was like that gritty, but a little bit of comic booky, kind of like what I was just talking about. And there were just certain aspects of it that I genuinely enjoyed. It was more that detective-esque story and things that were happening beyond just the. Maybe it's just because Dark Knight Rises left a really bad taste in my mouth. I hate that fucking movie.
Yeah, same.
I wish that movie didn't exist, but I just really enjoyed it. So those are my two Batman choices, and then I would probably say Spider-Verse if I went on a Marvel side. I know that's probably getting behind everybody else, but it's good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff in it from a humor standpoint, from a even though Miles isn't necessarily, my go-to immediate thought of Spider-Man, I just enjoyed it. It was really good.
Yeah. I did enjoy the first one. I'm going to agree with you. The best superhero movie is Mask of the Phantasm. So
at least we can agree. We can shake hands. We can leave this conversation as friends.
we don't. I mean, we were always.
Well, we're still doing it anyway. But we had a lot of good, agreeable points throughout this conversation. But
definitely. And then actually, I'll surprise everybody. I think I'll surprise everybody. My favorite live action superhero movie is probably Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire. That's probably jumping on a bandwagon, but I think that really is possibly a perfect superhero movie. Forget about sequel and prequel and all that. That might be it.
And my hot take is that, well, this is a very hot take, that Amazing Spider-Man 2 isn't as bad as it gets flack for. It's very comic-y. Like the suit is so much better. The humor of his Spider-Man is so much better. I know we're totally switching gears to a totally different franchise and everything. But
we can edit it. This is another ramble.
Perfect. But I just felt like his Spider-Man was in that movie it just fit so much better. The whole weight of Gwen's death just worked really well. That scene was great.
Oh yes,
I get chills every single time she snaps her neck. From a ew, that was gross, but also that was really rough sort of standpoint. I don't think it's as bad as it gets flack for. It fits very well in that sort of realm of realism and comic book for me, as we just kind of discussed. That it just works for me. I don't think it's nearly as bad as everyone gives it flack for.
No, I'm with you on that one. It, like a lot of things I say, it's just. And Sal agrees too, and I think I'm gonna say Aaron. I think Steve as well. It just comes down to the editing and some of the choices, but for the most part, there is something worthwhile in most stuff because there's so much effort and money dumped into these movies. But no, I'll agree with you. And that opening scene is damn good. Like, and him seeing like Dennis Leary's ghost as Captain Gwen Stacy, I was just when he was like, oh my god, and then it just got overcrowded, which
for sure.
Yeah,
kind of wish there would be more there, but I know that's wild. I don't know if we did give our grades to the Flash going back.
We did, but let's reiterate since it's here.
Sure.
After you.
So I gave the movie a 6. Again, it's watchable. I don't think it's necessarily the worst movie ever, but it's riddled with problems that are tough pills to swallow from one standpoint or another. CG, some of the actions that have happened, storytelling wise, you name it. It's got a lot of hurdles throughout the movie. So I gave it a 6 out of 10.
Right, and I gave it a 5. More or less for the same reasons. There were things that brought it up, Palais and Keaton, but for everything we got, and especially in a world where they can shelve Batgirl, I know we're talking about two wildly different budgets, but in a world where they can take the loss on a finished 90% finished movie like Batgirl, and they still put this out, and it's probably going to have, realistically, in my point of view, nothing to do with anything going forward. 5 at best. Again, it is watchable even with the VFX issues, but 3 days later, or 2 days later after reviewing it, and I'm just like, what happened again? So That's
I've had a lot of revelations even just in this conversation. So
yeah,
I was like,
So-
oh yeah, I did pay for that movie, didn't I? I did.
Yeah. exactly. I paid for that too, and I'm kind of like, oh, all right. But
Yeah.
this has been great. We've been meaning to get together and talk about something for forever. And I think next we definitely have to do excuse me. Well, you have to watch Clone Wars
I
after.
still have to watch most of Clone
but
Wars.
we
Steve's
have to
gonna
talk
give me the
Rebels.
comprehensive list. But Rebels, yes, we definitely have to
Yes.
talk about Rebels. Ahsoka, I think, is in what, a month or so?
August.
August?
So 2
Okay.
months from now.
2
Yeah.
months. Okay.
So
So we definitely
yeah.
have time for enough to go over it. Don't know if we want to tackle it season by season or just talking about it as a whole. However you want to do it, and we'll
We'll
tackle it.
figure it out. But anything you're working on that you'd like to mention? This is kind of a Steve thing, but I said it, so screw it. Anything you're working on?
Nothing big at the moment. Trying to join within the nerd affiliated group and jump in where I can. So probably be seeing my face a little bit more frequently, which is always fun. If you want to check out some other videos, I'm not always the video person, but for a good majority over on the Nerdgenic channel. If you want to check out anything there, but Nerd Affiliated's home. So I'm with my people here, and buy merch, help us out, support us,
Yes.
subscribe, ring the bell notification, all that good stuff.
Everything he just said, and also please join the Nerd Affiliated Army. You can give us topics to talk about, and Steve puts a link in his live chats Thursday evening. You can even join and talk to the man himself. So
It's true. They're a lot of fun. Whether you're in the chat or on with Steve live, it's always a good time.
it is. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to all you guys next time. Steve, play us out, please.